And we should be live, hopefully, on your end. Sweet. All right. Well, welcome anyone who is joining here on YouTube Live. Sorry, it's been a while since I've been on, but I had a busy last 2 months. But today I've got Eric Bucher with me. So Eric is an assistant professor at Xavier in math, and I thought I would just kind of talk to him, and he could tell us his journey, how he got here. And so thanks for joining, Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I know I've been talking to you for 5 minutes, so it's weird
yep,
now, but that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, Eric and I, we both went to Gonzaga, so that's how we know each other. And so yeah, he went more the theoretical math route. I went more the actuarial route. So and I promised to have some more actuaries on at some point. I've been interviewing a lot of professors lately, but I think he has an interesting story. So so my first question for you is, I'm trying to remember, did you grow up in Australia, or you lived in Australia at some point?
Sort of. So yeah, I grew up outside of DC, and then when I was 13, I moved to Arizona for a couple of years, and then my dad's like extremely impulsive, and so we sort of moved to Arizona on a whim, and then he went on a bike trip in New Zealand for like 6 weeks and came back and said, "We're moving to New Zealand." And unlike normal human beings who say that and then they don't move, we like packed up, and 4 months later we were in New Zealand in a hotel trying to figure out what we were going to do in New Zealand now.
So and that was all from the bike trip there.
Yeah, he went on a bike trip. He said this place is awesome, and then he just like sold everything, and we were in a hotel for like 2 weeks while he like figured out what the plan was.
Cool.
Yeah, and so we were out there. I was out there for 2 years until I went to Gonzaga.
Okay.
So I did sort of half my high school in New Zealand.
So were you excited to move to New Zealand, or were you kind of mad at your dad?
So he tells the story better than I do. When we moved to Arizona, I believe the exact quote that I said was, "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're ruining my life." And so when he moved me. Like he comes in and he was all very serious. He's like, "I should ask Eric before we like randomly go because he's so mad at me for ruining his life." So he came in and he asked me and he said, "Can we move to I'm thinking of moving to New Zealand. What do you think?" And my comment was, "What do I care? You've already ruined my life when you moved to Arizona." so I don't know if I was excited or indifferent by that time.
So you were just kind of pissed off overall.
Yeah. So it was pretty exciting, but yeah, I liked it. I mean, New Zealand was great, but I always sort of wanted to come back to school in the States, so that's how I ended up coming back.
That's cool. Yeah, I know. I've heard New Zealand's awesome. I'd like to visit there.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to visit, and I guess while we're on the internet, the plug: if you're in Christchurch, New Zealand, there's an awesome Brazilian barbecue owned by my brothers and my father. So go get Brazilian food if you're ever in Christchurch, New Zealand. It's called Brazilian barbecue.
All right, sweet. He got the plug in. So
done. Done. I think my brother is watching from the restaurant. So done.
Sweet, perfect. Okay, so I'm curious. I've been asking a lot of people this, were you good at math from a young age? Is it something that interested you, or kind of how did that start for you?
Yeah, so I think math was always my strongest subject in school. I never thought of it as, I don't know, I always feel like when we're doing math in high school and how we generally teach it, you think, okay, I'm good at math, so I should be an engineer, or I should be an accountant, or I should be a finance person or something. Like, that's sort of the myth that you hear in the back of your head. So yeah, I was always strong at math, but I never liked it, if that makes sense. So I was good at it, but I was more interested in puzzles and games and things like this. So when I got to school, I had very little intention to do math because I was sort of bored with math for too long, which is sort of a weird thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. No, that's like, I think people a lot of times do get that confused. When you're really good at something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you like it.
Yeah. And so like maybe this is my plug for math to all the kids out there that are possibly interested. The math that we teach in school is very geared towards getting you ready to be an engineer, and that's great. And if you like the math in school, then you certainly will like the math you're going to do when you go to college. But there's a whole world of math out there that isn't like the math you do in your kindergarten to high school years. And you probably, you know this too, like as you take these higher level math classes, it doesn't feel anything like calculus. It's a totally different thing. And that's what I fell in love with, was that it wasn't the, you know, the calculus side of things. In fact, I went to school as a theater arts major. And it wasn't until I randomly took a math class for my minor that I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. What do I have to do this? Or what do I have to do to keep doing this? And someone said, oh, if you like this, this is what math actually looks like from here on out. And so that's when I did the switch, is when I took my first sort of theoretical math class. And that's really this, I think of it as puzzle solving. If you're really into things like Sudoku puzzles, or you like board games, or you like solving things and sort of like just optimizing little things, and I don't know, patterns are sort of things you like, but you hate math, you probably actually love math, you just don't know it yet, or something like that.
You know, that's interesting you say that, because when I was talking to Kim, she was saying that she feels like she got more creative energy out in the math side than she did in the art side. She was a double major with art and math. And I was like, that's an interesting way to put it, because math is very different when you get to higher level math. Obviously, I didn't get my PhD like you, but it's very different, like you're saying, than calculus or algebra or trigonometry or some of the, like, that kind of a math.
Yeah, it's like, the way I think about it, I teach 225 right now, which is it's Xavier's equivalent of like introduction to your first math class, like we call it foundations, but other places have called it transitions. You give it some, you know, grandiose name as the starting point, or something like this. But the idea is, it's almost more like logic puzzles. And so you'll have students that come in and they're taking it because for whatever reason they have to, and they fall in love with it, not thinking they were going to like it at all. And on the other hand, you have students who think they love math and they take this and go, ugh, this is not for me at all. Give me some crunchy integral to calculate. And that's fine too. Like, but it's sort of weird. There's two edges of the sword. And to me, I wish we could put a little bit more of that puzzle solving and creative math into the high school curriculum, so that we're not leading kids out of math that maybe would like it. So this is sort of like my side passion, is I like to do a lot of community outreach to sort of get to middle schoolers and high schoolers and get them a taste of maybe what math is actually like, so that they can actually make a good judgment as whether they want to do this or not.
Do you feel like there is importance to, like, there's a lot of math that we would consider quote unquote non-practical, just because maybe we can't apply it today, but might be able to be applied at some point. Do you think it's important for people to pursue those types of things? I mean, you don't have to convince me, because I think it's fun, and like I think other people would think it's fun. I'm a nerd like that, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I 100%. So again, I'm teaching at a liberal arts school for a reason. So I very much sort of am pro all educational experiences. But the biggest thing about math to me is this, and so I'll tell you a little bit about, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So my first job out of school, I went to grad school for 2 years at Oregon State, and I got my master's in math. And then after that, I went back home to New Zealand for various personal reasons. And when I was home, I didn't have a math job. I worked the family business, which at the time was not Brazilian food, but instead Subway.
Oh, wow.
And so I opened a Subway restaurant. Owned a Subway there? Yeah, well, after we went there was lots of Subways there. So that ended up being the family business.
Did you know that I worked at Subway in high school?
Ah, damn it. I hate this every time I meet them. So, okay, now I have to tell this story. So
all right, let's hear it.
I used to be, in many ways, I used to tell everyone when I was working at Subway that I was the best mathematician at Subway. Like, and this used to be like my claim to fame. I was the best mathematician among all the Subway employees in the world. Then, I don't know if you've been like there was something that happened sort of like 3 or 4 years ago in the news or the math news, that is kind of exciting. So there's the twin prime conjecture is this statement that a pair of twin primes are two primes that only differ by 2. So like 11 and 13, or 17 and 19, or oh God, I'm gonna 37, no. Okay, well, anyways, twin primes are primes that differ by 2.
Okay.
And what happens is if you sit down with a piece of paper and make a big grid and you cross things out and you try and circle all the prime numbers, you'll see that, you know, they get sparingly few and far between. But the conjecture is that actually, no matter what, you can always find another pair of twin primes. There's an infinite number of twin prime pairs. And this seems kind of like ridiculous because as you go out, primes get further and further apart, but then all of a sudden you will always get a pair right next to each other. You know, 8,000 digits, there's going to be a pair of primes right next to each other. And so there was this mathematician who made some really good headway on this problem a few years back. And what he did was he showed that maybe we can't always find a pair that's 2 apart, but we can actually find a pair that's like, I don't know, 1 million apart or something like this, which sounds ridiculous and not very helpful. But it used to be, we can't find any pair and put any bound on this. It used to be infinite. Now we know it's at least a number. So the gap from infinite to a number is a big difference. And so now the goal is to like tighten that gap all the way down to 2, right? Yeah. Now, granted, 1 million to 2, it's not an easy tighten, but it's
been actually proved that it is a number. At least we know whether it's 1 million, whether it's 2, we know it's a number.
It's progress, yeah. Basically, we know it's got hope. And anyways, my main vendetta against this man is not because of his mathematics. It's because at the time there was some article about him, and he mentioned a whole bunch how he used to work at Subway. And so what upsets me is it turns out that my claim that I'm the greatest mathematician working at a Subway has been false for years. Oh, no. So now I still claim this, that of the mathematicians in the world, I can probably make a sandwich the fastest.
Okay, there you go. So, nice.
But now I need you, and now you have upset me, and now I have to like have future sandwich competitions.
I think you're a better mathematician than me, so you still got me there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so the story was I was
current Subway mathematician at the time. So there you go.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe I wasn't lying. Well, but I think actually if you look at the article, he was actually at a Subway at the time. Like it worked out terrible. I remember this because my brother came in one day at Subway and says, "You lying, like you have been lying to me for years." And he's got this article like printed out to sit there and go, "There's this guy at Subway kicking your ass."
That's amazing.
But yeah, so I'll never forget that there's some guy in a Connecticut Subway who ruined my life. So anyways, the point of the story was I used to work at Subway and I opened some stores, and then after that I had a door-to-door sales job where I used to go door-to-door selling cable. So I was like the guy asking you if you want to sign up for HBO. And I used to always wonder, like, you know, why do, like, what was math have to do with all these things? And the truth is, math is about problem solving. It's about taking in complicated ideas, answering complicated questions, and communicating them clearly back to people. And that's a skill that goes beyond just a classroom. That's a skill that goes beyond the topics you're learning. Yep. Basically, I think of it as, you know, if you read a lot, you become a faster reader, right? If you take a lot of free throws, you become a better free throw shooter, right? And math is about working out your brain and just putting it through confusing, complicated things that it doesn't understand at first, and then you work hard and then you get it. And that's the real process that you gain in math. It's not about the facts that are being told to you. It's about the sort of cognitive synapses that are firing when you're learning these facts. And what's cool about math is you don't learn these facts. It's not somebody at a board telling you these facts. It should be you discovering these patterns for yourself. And that's what I think is really cool. And if we were doing a better job, you know, in the classroom, and this is on us, this is on me as a teacher, we have to make sure we're doing this for the students. We're not just in at a board and telling them, you know, this is how you multiply. We're letting them discover these things for themselves.
I had a professor once that said math is not a spectator sport. So he would start writing something on the chalkboard, and it was a chalkboard, by the way. And then he would set his chalk down, and then he'd be like, "Okay, I'm going to walk around the room and just watch what you guys are doing."
Yeah.
And we're like, "What?" So we just had to and yeah, that was his thing.
That's how I teach most of my classes now. I do like a what they call a flipped classroom approach, where I sort of give my students like the big idea and then just give them things that they in theory don't know how to do until they sit there and grind it out for, you know, 10, 15 minutes. And then by the end, they're like, I think I understand this. And that's sort of the goal, is them to understand it on their own merit, not because you hand it to them.
I like what you're saying about clearly communicating an idea, because I would say what I did in math, I mean, obviously being an actuary, there is some application, but it's not as heavily mathematical as you might think at times. Like sometimes it is. Sometimes I'm just crunching numbers. Other days it's more I'm communicating, or it's more business type stuff. But I would say knowing how to like walk through and say, here are my assumptions, here's what I'm trying to get to, and then walk through and clearly like write like a proof. Basically, when you write a proof, like sometimes I write emails like that and people say like, oh, you communicated that really well. And then it's like, oh, I think I actually kind of learned that in my math classes, weirdly enough, like not in a writing class, not in an English class or anything like that. That was in my math class that I learned how to communicate something like that. So I like what you're saying to that point.
Yeah, and it's a lot about just learning to present things logically and catch yourself when they're not logical. I always used to say mathematicians are like honest to a fault. If something's wrong, they just won't move on. They'll go, well, I can't try and feed you this lie. It's over. And so this is sort of something that I think is a good quality, is to constantly be making sure what you're saying makes sense.
But I'll tell a story, and I'm like, actually, I might be remembering that incorrectly because I'm down to the detail, but it's just the way my brain thinks.
Sorry, Paul, I might be losing you. You broke up a little bit there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can, but you're kind of like still and frozen and coming back in and out.
Hopefully hopefully it'll get better. I can still hear you fine.
Okay, now I think you're good.
Now I'm good? Okay.
I'm losing you one more time.
Hold on.
So now I'm just like on the internet by myself talking to people. I feel like this is too much power.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I still have you breaking up a little bit, but I think it's okay. You're fuzzy. You look like somebody, you know, painted over the screen with a picture of Paul.
Hopefully it'll improve. We'll see. I'll try asking another question. We'll see how this goes. If we have to restart, we can.
Okay, go ahead.
So I wanted to back up, and I want to get the story of kind of how you got to where you're at now, but how did you choose to go to Gonzaga?
What? Oh, how did I choose to go to Gonzaga?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I had decided I wanted to go back to school in the US, and so I kind of looked at a map and I had looked around and I said, well, I've lived in the Southwest, I've lived in the East Coast, let's go like the Northwest or something, because I've never been there. And so I booked a plane ticket. I actually, New Zealand ends school in December. So in December, I booked a plane ticket, came to the US, and I was, you know, we rented a car and I was just going to drive around and look at random schools and see what I liked. And the first place we hit was Spokane. So I hit Gonzaga, and I hadn't taken the SATs. And so Gonzaga said, well, we can give you the SATs. And I was saying, well, I'm planning to take them, and then I was going to start in September somewhere. They said, well, if you want to take the SATs here, it's not like official, but we can give you them because we're a private school and we can just choose to look at our own SAT score. Like, we don't need official ones. So they gave me the SAT, and they said, do you want to take them? And I had just gotten off like this 30-hour flight or whatever it was. And they said, and I said, when would I take it? They said, I don't know. Can you do it tomorrow morning? So I you know, I was talking to this admissions person on the phone. So I took the SATs in the morning, and while they graded the SATs, I guess they, you know, I walked around and I did the tour and everything, and they came back and they said, you know, if you want, you can just start here, you know, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it was.
No way.
And all the other places were like going to make me wait until September, and I didn't visit anything yet. And I said, this place looks great. Like, let's do it. So we just sort of on the spot, I just kind of signed up. So it was sort of the first
That's awesome.
I went to. I knew really nothing about it. And in retrospect, it was an amazing choice for me. But I mean, like as everything else in life, it just seems to be a fluke that I chose Gonzaga.
I never knew schools did SAT like that, or they have their own version and they just gave you the test.
Well, I think literally somebody went and downloaded an SAT test, like a practice one, and just said, do this one and we'll let somebody grade it. And, you know, and if we like it, we won't need an official one.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So like, it was just this sort of random thing. I guess I did well enough that they didn't kick me out or something like this, but it was one of those things. I'm sure it wasn't very good, but yeah. So that was sort of the thing. And when I got there, I loved the campus. Like it was snowing like in the middle of December, and it was like, you know, it's nice in Spokane. But it was just barely snowing, so I didn't realize how miserable it would get.
Yep. Well, and also when you come from somewhere else, like, I mean, I just moved back here to Spokane, as I told you, and like, it's beautiful when you first come here. And I think if you live here for years and then you're like, oh boy, here comes the snow again, you know?
But no, and I hadn't seen snow in like, I mean, we didn't get much snow in Christchurch, so I hadn't seen snow in like 4 or 5 years of my life. So I was like, an inch of snow, this is the coolest thing. And like,
awesome,
you know, not falling on the ice and killing myself or anything. Like this was the perfect amount of like sales pitch snow or something.
Exactly. By the way, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're entirely fine now. So I don't know.
All right. Sometimes it'll cut in and out like that, so hopefully it'll stay okay.
Okay, sounds good.
But anyway, so you were a theater major, and then you said there was a math class that really like sparked you into becoming a math major. Was that kind of how it went?
Yeah, so I was a theater major when I got there because I had high hopes of being a comedian or something like this. I don't know. And so I was a psychology minor at the time, actually. And then I switched to a psychology major and I was a theater minor. And I was talking to one of my psychology professors and he said, and this is maybe good advice for other people who are maybe math adjacent. He said, well, it'd be a good idea to get a math minor because a lot of the kids that go into psychology and want to go to grad school and things, they struggle with the math. And so that's something that the graduate programs are really aware of, is that there's these statistics that go on in these social sciences and in any sciences. And that tends to be the thing that kind of washes people out when they go on, is actually not the subject that they're interested in, it's the math. And so he said, if you can sort of prove that you can do math by getting a math minor, then you would look like, you know, you'd be a shoo-in or something like this. And for grad school. So I said, okay, yeah, I was good at math in high school. I'm sure I can get through Calc 3 and whatever else you got to do for a math minor. And then I sat in on Dr. Burke's, John Burke's, I think it was their foundations. I don't know what we called it. Transitions, discrete math. No, we called it discrete math. And I sat in on discrete math, and that was that first math about logic and proof techniques. It was that first math class where you don't, the goal is not calculus anymore. It is not to get you to calculus. The goal is to learn like how logic works and how
induction, like other types of like ways of thinking, like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and just making a mathematical argument. And I remember he did this proof on the board. It was that the rational numbers are countable or something like this. So for those, you know, those in the audience that don't know what this means, there are different sizes of infinity. This is bold to say. So infinity is a set that doesn't have a number of things in it. So that could mean there's a lot, like you could just keep going. But the first size of infinity you want to think of as the counting numbers. So 1, 2, 3, all the way up. And we call a set countable if you can pair it off and you can count it one at a time. So the integers at first glance look twice as big as the counting numbers. But what you can do is you can do 0 first, and then you can do 1 second, and then -1 third, and then 2 fourth, and then -2 fifth, and so on. And you found a way to count them. So we call that a countable infinity. And the one that sort of baffles my mind, so if you can ever find a way to list them, you've made it a countable, you've counted it. And like it turns out the rational numbers are countable as well. And that one is the one that baffled me. Like I was like, no, I don't believe this at all. I don't see how you can count all the possible fractions in any sensible way. And then the proof of this is just like a picture. So I encourage anyone to just Google rationals are countable or something like this. and you'll see a picture and you're like, oh, that's so cool. And to me, that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And that really sort of opened my mind up to the fact that math was really like solving little puzzles.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. And I remember this story way too well. I went to Dr. Burke. Junior year of college, like 90% done with a psychology degree. And I said, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. What do I have to do to keep doing this for the rest of my life? And he said, I don't think math is for everyone. Was the only thing he said to me. And then what's funny is he said this to me, and in the end, I realized that he was sort of joking. He's saying this thing where I think he wanted to see if I like really was passionate about it or I was just kind of full of shit.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that was the thing that sort of. So I think part of me was like, well, I'm just going to prove that I really like this, and so I did a bunch of math for the next 2.5 years, and that was the proof that did it. It was the thing I saw, the piece of math that just sort of blew my mind so much that I went, I want to learn how to think like that.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I remember seeing. I think I saw that proof.
I think we were in the same class, probably.
Well, I wasn't in your discrete class, but I took discrete at a different school before I transferred to Gonzaga. But I think the first time I saw the countable thing for the rational numbers was probably in number theory, but I can't remember now.
Yeah, I'm sure Burke did it at some point because Burke also taught Paul and I's number theory class back in 2007 or something like that.
And yeah, and I tell the story still, and I told you this before, that we took number theory. It was a really small class, and I mean, I loved that class. And and Burke was like, so if anyone wants to take this advanced number theory class, I'm thinking about creating it, but I have to have at least like 2 or 3 people. And so Eric and me and then another guy, Shay, who I've interviewed on here, we were the only 3 that wanted to. And he's like, okay, that's enough, we'll do it. And so it was at like, I don't know, we're crazy. I guess we like pain, but it was at like 8 in the morning and just thinking about, but
I think it was earlier. I think it was actually 7 in the morning or something.
Was it? Okay. I just remember it being super early, and I was like, I like math, but I don't know if I like it this much. Because when I would get up, I'd be like, why did I do this? And then but it was an easy class because he wasn't really giving us exams in that one. Like the number theory one. Yeah, like the first one was actually like real tests and everything. The second one, he was like, we're just gonna have fun. And so he started it off like he was telling a story. It was like, okay, I'm gonna start with this, and then every day built on the next day. And I remember after day 2, I think it was, or 3, I started getting lost, and I just wasn't motivated enough to like keep up. And I remember you and Shay were following, and I'm like, okay, I thought, that's the first moment where I was like, these 2 guys they're geniuses next to me.
No, they're idiots because we went into the world of theoretical math, and then now.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I was 33 before I got my first real job. So
that's always crazy to me. People that get their PhD. So let's talk about that. After Gonzaga, you said you got your master's.
Yeah, I went to Oregon State for 2 years and got my master's, and then I went and sort of lived in the real world a little bit for about 2 years, and I really missed math, and I got really lucky that my girlfriend at the time and now wife.
I didn't know you guys were dating back then.
Yeah, we were. It was in New Zealand, and I sort of said, you know what, I want to go back to graduate school. I really miss doing math, and my wife is from Toronto, and so she happened to be on New Zealand more or less on vacation. While she was there, and we met during an earthquake, but that's like a story for a whole nother time.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so we were in Christchurch, and I sort of said, I think I want to go back. I said, this is gonna sound crazy. Do you want to go back? Like, I want to go back to school for 6 years or whatever it was gonna be. And I was like, they'll pay me, but not really like enough money to start our lives. And so she was happy. She was excited. She said, let's do it. So I applied to a bunch of places. I gave her, the 6 pieces of paper that I got. And I said, these are sort of the 6 best ones. Where do you want to live for the next 6 years? And you pick, because I don't care. They seem about the same. And she, for whatever random reason, picked Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which was a blessing in its own right. We met some amazing people down there. We had a really good time. we got out of there in 4 years. So I was there for 4 years and finished my PhD.
But you had your master's, so it was like 2 years master's, 4 years for your PhD after that.
That's true, and so in general, I don't actually think it speeds up the timeline that much. So 6 years is sort of the norm for a math PhD, but generally speaking, I would say if you do a master's before, you'll shave off 1 year. You might do it in 5. And to be honest, most people like it's sort of. I was a little bit faster than planned because my son was born when I was at grad school, and we sort of were just on a money crunch to get a higher paycheck sooner than we could. And so I did a postdoc after my PhD at Michigan State. So we went from the heat of Louisiana to the freezing cold of Michigan, and we were there for 2 years before we came down to Cincinnati, New York for Xavier.
In your postdoc, I don't exactly know. What do you do in a postdoc? Is that more research and you're not really teaching much, or like what do you do in that?
No, so this is a good question, because in most subjects, like in chemistry or biology or something, it could mean very different things. Like a lot of times, like biology, you're working in a lab for a specific person on a specific project, and there's no teaching. You're almost just like a very highly trained employee of this individual person. Where math is a little different, since like math research generally isn't like in a lab or anything like this. It's people, it's me in my office writing things. That's what I do, right? I'm jotting things down and going, I think I can do this thing, and then you can or you can't. So we get a lot of autonomy when you do your research. So at Michigan State, it really is the same job as a professor for 3 years. It's just not. It's not a permanent position. It's just a fixed position. So I was there
teaching a little bit as well.
Yeah, I taught 2 classes. I think Michigan State's teaching load was 2-1, so 2 classes in the fall and 1 class in the spring.
Okay.
Which is a little less than they actually. I think it's the same that they ask their like regular faculty to teach.
Okay. And
then the rest of it is research. And I had a faculty mentor there who is amazing. I had Dr. Misha Shapiro, who is very, very talented and very just one of the nicest people I've ever met. And so on the rare chance that he happens to be watching this without knowing it existed, nor probably having Facebook. So
well,
so
maybe
at
some point he'll see it out on the internet.
Yeah, or this out there. Like cut and paste it into like his 60th birthday conference, and they'll be like,
there we go, exactly.
Yeah, so he was sort of my faculty mentor, and we would meet maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, and chit chat about, so what are you working on right now? And I would say, I'm doing this, I ran into this part, but I can't do this. And he'd go, yeah, okay, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I'd go, I don't know. And then we'd sort of go our separate ways, and he would work on his stuff. And then that was sort of our relationship. So yeah, it's a very different world. You're kind of just isolated and living in your own little like math world, and everyone does it a little differently. Some people meet with their person every single day. Some people have 5 collaborators. Some people only do projects by themselves. You have a lot of autonomy in the world of math research. So
so this is actually good for the next question, because I was wondering if you could explain to everyone watching in a very simple way what like your thesis was and what you studied and how you went about the process to even get to what you like discovered.
Sure. Cool. I can do my best. So
I mean, I know this took you 4 years, so I'm sure you can't explain it all here, but very high level.
I think it only took me 4 years because I was really slow. I don't know if it's interesting, but no, I did. So I worked on something called Cluster Algebras. And let me give you the really cool sales pitch about Cluster Algebras, and that's this. In physics, we care about what happens when particles slam into each other, right? We care about what happens at high energies because, the scientific community believes that, the Big Bang and the way black holes are formed, all these things happen at very, very high energy collisions between particles. And, they believe in it so much, they built this large hadron collider, right, that runs across multiple countries. And the way it works is you fire 2 particles opposite each other and you slam them into each other and that mimics what's happening at high energy particle collisions, right? They run miles and miles and miles, and they ram into each other. And the goal that the physicists have is to see what happens when it comes out. And unfortunately, the best they can do is make predictions about what they come out. And the best way to make these calculations about what comes out is these things called Feynman diagrams at the moment. And the way it works is there's a bunch of cancellations. You have like thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures. If you ever look up one computation, it takes like a 200-page book to do. And it turns out that like all but 50 of these 8,000 things are going to cancel and be zero. And so what happens is there's a lot of symmetry that's going on in these collisions. So if you think about it, if you throw two balls at each other in a room, more or less there's only so many ways they can hit each other, and they kind of are going to bounce in opposite directions. And if you look at the average way that they could possibly bounce, a lot of them are going to cancel. Totally. Right? Like this direction hit is going to sort of cancel with this direction hit or something like that. So the idea is that there's a lot of symmetry, and what cluster algebras do, and this is sort of a really cool fluke of cluster theory. There's a graph process, a discrete process that's very just combinatorial, so it's like a game that governs this symmetry. And so the goal of this game is to understand how this symmetry really behaves, or how this game really behaves. And it just so happens to have applications to a huge variety of math physics, electrical networks, topological surfaces. Like there's just all these areas of math that it's pretty amazing. And so what I'll do now that I've sort of given you the broad picture of, if you want to understand the symmetries of the universe, then you should care about this thesis.
And would you call everything that you're explaining now, is this, I don't even know what a cluster algebra is. Is that what you're explaining right now, or are you explaining
that cluster algebras are the thing that control the symmetry of high particle collisions? Okay. So, okay. Or at least that's the current work that people are interested in. Maybe I'll give you like a really baby example. Take a pentagon. So if I have a piece of paper, I'll draw on my son's thing. I think he won't mind.
You get a whiteboard in that room.
No, I don't have a whiteboard. But if you take a pentagon like this, yep. Oh, that's no good. Let's get a new piece.
I could see it.
Yeah, but okay. You take a pentagon, right, or any shape, and then if you add in diagonals to this thing, like so. Okay. Right. Yep. If you want to take this picture and produce another picture that would be chopping it up into triangles, you could remove this diagonal and replace it with a different diagonal. And I'll make this one a dotted line. Okay. So for instance, you could take that one and replace it with the dotted line. You'd have a different triangulation. You'd have a different way of chopping it up into triangles. Yep. And that flip turns out to be the relations of these cluster algebras. This is these symmetries that we're talking about, is that you can flip all of these different triangles and get to any other triangulation, and that is modeled by this cluster algebra symmetry that we're talking about. So what I actually studied was chopping up more complicated things. Think of like a donut with 17 holes, in it, and then chopping that up into triangles, and then flipping things and seeing if you can get from one type of triangulation to another. Interesting. So I do a lot of like staring at surfaces. This is what we call a surface, and chopping them up into triangles and seeing if you can understand the combinatorics of how flips affect the triangulation.
So did you use much topology type stuff with this?
Yeah. So in many ways, I'm sort of a half topologist these days.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. So when you're sitting there researching, and you kind of had that idea of what you wanted to do, a lot of it for you was you kind of had the base you needed, and you were trying to prove this thing, and it's a lot of like trying things out. Yeah.
So I mean, the long story short, what I'm trying to prove in my thesis work, oh God, I have to remember what it was, but if you take a very special triangulation, so a very special way of cutting up into triangles, can you flip it can you find a sequence of flips that turns it into another very special triangulation? And this produces a certain algebraic object that I'm looking for. But the point is, I sort of was trying to prove that this thing existed, that this nice mutation sequence existed. And so, I was trying to do it for an infinite number of surfaces. So we had to do like some sort of like inductive argument for why you could always do it this way.
That's amazing. Okay, that's pretty cool.
And so that's sort of what I do. But honestly, I don't know sort of how fascinating it is. There's lots of pretty pictures and stuff like this. But yeah, so that was what my thesis was. And so, you know, once you find the sequence that works, the next step is to prove that that sequence always works. And so the finding the sequence is sort of the easy part. The proving the sequence is always going to work is the hard part.
That's interesting. So I'm curious, like, so you did your master's, you did your PhD, you studied all this. When was the first time you actually taught a class? Was that while you were getting your master's?
I was a what do you call it, a recitation instructor when I was at Oregon State. So like I had a class that I met once a week, and you know, and they did the regular lecture, and then they came to me and did problem sessions. The first time I was given complete control of a class was when I was a grad student at LSU. The first class I ever taught was Calc 1. So I was teaching derivatives, like derivative calculus.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what was your experience like the first time you walk into a room to teach a class? Were you nervous? Was it strange, like standing in front of everyone talking? I'm curious of like those aspects of it.
Yeah. So the very first time I taught a class, the first time I was in charge of a class, we started in the end of August, and my son was born September 19th.
Okay.
So I told I'm talking to the students, I'm doing things, and I've like done syllabus day, and I said, also, like, my phone is on, no one else can have their phone on, but if this phone goes off,
no, I'm leaving.
I'm having a baby. Yeah. So maybe, I think my son was born, I missed like a week of class, but unfortunately at the time, Louisiana, I got some people to cover for me, and they were really great, but I didn't have like paternity leave or anything like this. Okay, yeah. So maybe like the 6th or 7th class I was teaching, my son, like my wife had to go to work or something and couldn't get someone to watch the baby. So I've got my son in a stroller with a friend in the hallway. And so I'm going outside, like, and so I go outside because he starts screaming, and I'm in the middle of teaching class, and I'm like patting his back, and then I like settle him down, and I come back in, and I'm teaching class, and the students they look at me and they go, "What is all over your back?" And I look over there, and I touch this, and I go, "I think he threw up all over me," and I'm covered in vomit down my back. And then I just went back to finishing the problem that we were doing. And then they said, "Are you just gonna move? Like, you're not gonna do anything about this?" And I said, "No." I said, "I haven't slept in 3 weeks." I said, "I've got a baby on one shoulder, vomit down my thing," and I said, We're gonna learn how to do this derivative today.
We are doing this.
So, and they thought this was the funniest thing they'd ever seen, like in the history of a class. So, I mean, I think I always had a really good rapport on that class from the get-go, because I think they very much understood, like, they appreciated the fact that teaching for the first time was not even the slightest change I was going through, you know.
Like, you had a ton else going on. That's crazy.
So like, you know, I would come in and I'd have bags under my eyes, and I haven't shaved in weeks, and they look at me and they're like, "Aren't you wearing the same shirt you had on 3 days ago?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like, let's go through it." And so we had a really good time, and they were a really good class, and they were super engaged. So yeah, I think I got really, really lucky that my first teaching experience, I had such a good group of students that we sort of bonded over like this just being like the life experience of all time for me. So yeah, so for me, I mean, that was a good, I don't know. I never got nervous in front of a class. I don't really get nervous in front of classes. I don't know if you know, I used to do improv in high school or in college.
Yeah, that's right.
So I always say that if standing in front of 25 students and trying to get them that are paying money to be there, and all they need to do is learn some math, that's a lot easier than standing in front of 200 people and trying to make them laugh when they kind of don't want to be there. So
exactly.
So yeah, no. So I've always loved teaching. Teaching's, you know, the reason I got into this in the first place a little bit. Yeah. So
walking into that first class with having a baby on the way, having all the stuff you had going on, did you have to do much prep? I mean, it was calculus, which I'm sure felt.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of prep. Like, I mean, I try to run, as I said, active classrooms because I think you learn better from doing these things. I always say if math is like shooting free throws, if all you had to do was watch a great free throw shooter shoot one, if all you had to do was watch Steph Curry take one free throw, and then I could replicate it, we'd all be playing in the NBA, right? That's not how it works. You have to go out and do all these free throws. So I try not to do a lot on the board. So I try to do a lot of like worksheets and get, you know, give them an example and then let them do 2 or 3 and then do an example and then them do 2 or 3. And so for me, there's a lot of prep to this in that, like, I do have to prepare, you know, what we're going to do. But, you know, the nice thing is when you're up at, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning because your baby won't sleep and you're patting them, you know, and they're sleeping on your shoulder and you can't put them down, writing math problems is one thing you can do.
That's a good point. Wow, that is crazy.
Time was not my issue at all. It was lack of sleep. And they knew this. Like, there were times where I'm like, okay, here's the deal. You're going to do these 5 problems for a half hour. Then you're going to wake me up. And then we're going to go over and see how we did. And then you're going to do these other 3 problems. Then I'm going to go back to sleep. And then you're going to wake me up.
I can fall asleep. That's amazing.
I didn't do this on a regular basis, but I once had them. They were sweet. They would bring me. They'd set up like a little chair and like a pillow one day, and I came in there like, this is your sleeping spot if you need it. And I was like, you know, I'm not that bad of a teacher. But no, I mean, I think we had a really good rapport, and there was very active class. So active classes tend to cut down on your prep because I don't have to have this beautifully thought out problem I'm going to present at the board because we're going to kind of go into it knowing it's going to be exploratory and we want to run into trouble and we want to talk about where we got stuck. So it's almost better just to have a loose plan for my classes. So I've always been kind of, the way I teach tends to lend itself to less prep time, but sort of more anxiety in the classroom.
Yeah, that's interesting. So for people that are thinking about wanting to get a PhD in math and wanting to go that route, do you feel like the experience was worth it? Is it rewarding? Is it something you would encourage people to do?
Yeah, I mean, like, so okay, so I'll maybe I'm giving you the wrong answer, but the answer really should be if you love it, you should do it. Yeah. Because most graduate programs are going to pay you. Right, so you're going to get your tuition covered, and you're going to get a stipend, and you're going to teach, and you're not going to make bank in put it in your account while you're doing it, but you're also not losing money doing it, right? Yeah. So it's a positive experience in that you don't have that much to lose, you know, in that you're not taking out giant medical, you know, med school loans or something like this and then deciding you don't want to be a doctor. Yeah. And the only thing about it is you're going to be doing it's all math all the time. Or if you want to do statistics, it's all stats all the time. If you want to do biology, it's all biology all the time, right? Like, so you really have to have a pretty strong passion for the field. So I always say, if you're interested in something that you can think, man, if all I did all day was take math classes, then you should probably do it. If all I did all day was read poetry, then you should probably go to school for, you know, a PhD in poetry, right? And so the nice thing about math is they pay you. Generally, the way it works is if you have these qualifying exams, and if you ever, for whatever reason, leave early, you normally get a master's degree for your services, so to speak. Yeah. That's what happened. Like, I mean, that's how Oregon State was for me. I decided to go home. So I got a master's. I was enrolled in a PhD program, and I just sort of, you know, decided, I think I don't really know if my heart's in it right now, and I want to do something else. And you still get a really great consolation prize in that you have a master's degree in math that gets you a lot of great jobs.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, if you want to do it, or you have if the idea of school is still exciting to you, and the idea of learning more math is still exciting, I would say go for it. Because it's a generally good experience, and a lot of mathematicians, you know, they leave and they finish their PhD and they don't go into academia, right? Like, lots of them go into other jobs and get really cool, really great positions that are probably in many ways better than the academic positions. Certainly financially, they're better than the academic positions. And like, for instance, I think I got offered a job out of school that was also like working for a hedge fund or someone starting up a hedge fund. And doing, finance and things like that. And I'm not trained in that, but the thought process was, if you can do a PhD in math, I can train you in that in about, 3 months, and you're gonna be great at it.
Yeah. I think that is a common misconception that people have. It's like, oh, well, what do you do with math? Either you teach or become an actuary. Well, actually, there's a million options. There's so much you can do, because I think people realize that if you can do math, and that's the base of a lot of things, you can learn a lot of other stuff.
It's not just math. It comes back to what you were saying about presenting clear arguments. So the highest LSAT scores. So the LSAT is the exam that lawyers take, like pre-law students take to get to turn in those scores for their law school applications. The highest LSAT scores and the highest acceptance rate into law school is math majors over every other major, including political science, pre-law, right?
I would believe that.
There's no major that gets a better acceptance rate into law school and make better lawyers than mathematicians, right? And that's sort of this weird thing, because they're so good at thinking clearly, logically, and making convincing logical arguments. And if you think about what is law, but writing down something that is foolproof and nobody can come up with an argument that breaks it, kind of sounds like something mathematicians do. And make arguments that can't be broken. Well, this is sort of math in a nutshell. And so, yeah, I think the skills that are learned in a math degree lead to a lot of things. And I got, like, when I got a sales job, the comment they said wasn't like, why would we hire a mathematician to do sales? And my answer was, you shouldn't hire a mathematician to do sales. You should hire me to do sales, because I can sell things. And when it comes to using data and statistics to make a convincing argument, you want a mathematician to make that, right? You want an actuary to make that argument. And this because, like, your job, a lot of it is convincing non-math people with mathematical facts.
Completely. I mean, I have to convince salespeople. Speaking of sales, like, that's a lot of the people that we talk to. It's like, okay, no, you shouldn't do that because of X, Y, and Z. And it's a lot of trying to convince them. Some salespeople are extremely smart mathematically, and some aren't. But many times they want to sell a product for X price, and then you have to justify why it shouldn't be
X price is not profitable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and this is sort of the idea, is that I think that's probably why I got hired, is because they thought, well, they'll never have to have that conversation with me. Right? I'll be having that conversation with that guy. Going, no,
exactly.
Hey, and he's going, oh, you just saved us a bunch of money. I really shouldn't be signing off on this, right? And not, I mean, these are not finance products, so like, I mean, these are different. But in general, like, certainly having a mathematical background comes in play in a lot of sales situations, especially like analyzing just sales data and sales figures. It shows up. So I would always say math is an amazing. In some degrees, the degree gets you the job, and in some degrees you learn a lot, and a byproduct of the learning is a good job.
Yeah.
And I always think that should be the goal of education in general. I should learn so much that just by happenstance, I'm just a smarter, better, great version of myself. So I'll get the job the best job that I can get.
Totally.
And I think that's something that math helps you do. It just helps you become a more concise, clearer version of yourself. And that's really the sales pitch on why you should do math. And what happens is I just don't meet that many math majors who are sitting there going, God, I can't find a good job. I've never met one.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true.
And
I agree with you.
And I think part of it is because maybe, and I don't think a lot of us have clear ideas of what we're going to be doing 5 years from now when we finish. I think they just do math because it's something to do. But I really think at the end of the day, you really are very good at picking up other skills after you do a math degree. So yeah, so that's my sales pitch for the PhD. And in general, to kids who are interested in not sure what major they want to do, math is an extremely versatile major in that I think, you know, with a psych minor and a math degree, I could go back to psychology grad school right now without having a psych degree.
Yeah,
you know, and I don't think psychologists would doubt that in a second, because so much of their studying is statistical analysis.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
And, you know, and so I think this is just a common place, is that math is a hard thing to do, and it's a versatile thing, and it's, you know, it's sort of like just football players are great athletes, and they could probably play a whole bunch of sports sometimes, you know, like that kind of thing. So.
And actually, so I'm on this note, I'm curious, since we have some actuarial people that watch this channel, do you, like at Xavier, we talked about it a little bit, but do you have very many people interested in becoming an actuary? And do you think that, I know you're more on the theoretical math side, but do you feel like actuarial programs are popping up more, and is there more interest in it?
I mean, yeah. So I mean, while we have the actuaries, you know, on the line, or maybe some students who are thinking maybe I would be an actuary. I mean, you know, this actuary is always rated as like one of these like most satisfying career choices, because it's like lower stress but higher pay and that kind of thing or something. But yeah, so
they say low stress, high pay. Well, the high pay is true. The low stress is not always so true.
So yeah, so I'll fill you in, and this is my sales pitch for Xavier. And I, again, if you're remotely interested in school and you're a high schooler or something, you should come to Xavier and do math with me. I would love this.
You've even got the shirt on too.
Yeah, I got the shirt on. There's very few places where you can get small class sizes and sort of
here we go.
national ranked athletic programs. It's a great campus. Okay, sorry. So we have an actuary program. We have an actual actuary degree and a math degree, and they're both taught out of the math department. And we have a couple of faculty whose specialization is statistics, and they're geared towards teaching the actuary classes.
Yep.
And I just worked what we call it X days, but it's where the high schoolers come by and they visit, and they get to ask about Xavier and ask about the majors, and you know, just some are already enrolled in Xavier to start in the fall, and they just want to know what major they should do and that kind of thing. Right. And about half the students that come by are asking about the actuary program, probably more. And I'll tell you this, half the students are, all of the parents are, right? Like,
I would believe that.
And so I think like our actuary program, I mean, we have, you know, 12 math majors a year, generally speaking, and we have about 12 to 20 actuary majors a year.
Okay.
So some are
split then.
In actuary and math, because it's set up so that you can sort of overlap very easily, because a lot of the calc is all on both majors and stuff.
Right.
But there's a very big interest in actuarial studies, and I think you probably know more about why than I do. But what I can tell you is more schools are going in the direction of specialized programs for actuarial degrees, because they want to have a leg up on their students getting jobs in the field. And it used to be like, I mean, when we were in school, everyone said you should do an actuary thing because there's not enough of them. And I don't know if that's still the case, but our goal is we try and get our students to be able to pass at least one, if not two, of their actuary exams before they finish school. Like during their junior year, we try and have them pass with two, so they can internship over their junior summer with a program, like with a school or with a company, and actually be walking in with two proven exams in hand. And then we've kind of found evidence that since we've had this program versus you know, a traditional math program that just, you know, we could teach actuary like classes to get you ready, the higher rate has just been much better for our students since. So
I believe that, because I think a lot of programs have been doing this, like with the exams. Companies often like to see that you have a knack for it. Like, even if you're a math major, but if you haven't passed an exam, it's a different type of thing to pass an exam. Sure. And so I think the classes and the programs are popping up because they're like, okay, we're going to train students to pass the exam, but which is good. The problem with that is it raises the bar. So now suddenly, instead of like kids getting out of school and they
you
may
want them to have 2 past exams.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's getting, honestly, from what I've seen, is it's getting harder and harder to get in, because now you're competing against kids that have already passed a couple exams, had some internships, and it's like but once you get your foot in the door, I will say it is very, very hard to be unemployed. So
once you've proven yourself as a commodity a little bit, then
that's exactly it. So like once you have a job, you'll probably, I mean, it happens. People do get unemployed, but it's pretty, if you look at the actuarial profession as a whole compared to other professions as a whole, the unemployment rate is very low once you're in. But it's a very hard thing to get into. So I think it's interesting. I think these programs are popping up though to kind of help kids, like you're saying, get through the exams and maybe get like a general idea of insurance. They're more, I mean, I think most of the classes are more mathematically based and more exam based, but
so ours are very much, the way we've set up our program is, everything is a math class. Like everything is a 300 level math class code, that the math majors can enroll in as well as their electives, and the stats minors can enroll in as their electives. The only difference is their advisor is advising specifically as an actuarial, we give them an actuarial advisor, and they have 1 or 2 specific classes along the way that are exam specific, and then they take a couple of classes in the business college that are about working in a corporate environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so that's sort of the idea. And so what we find is we're trying to make sure they are still theoretically trained as mathematicians, so that they don't just know how to take exam 1, exam 2, and then when you ask them to do something that they haven't been trained for, they're like, what?
That's exactly it. I think that's important. I think you need to know the whys, because you're gonna come across problems. At least I have many times as an actuary where it's like, no one's giving me any guideline on how to solve this. It's literally just I have to figure something out. So I think that's super important. But we are about at an hour here, so I'm going to ask you 2 final, completely unrelated questions before we end here. First question is your favorite city you have lived in, because I know you've been kind of all over the place.
Favorite city I have lived in. I think I have to say, so far, I think the answer is Cincinnati. I've only been here like 3 months, but of all the cities I've lived in, this is my favorite city.
Is that just because it's new right now, or are there particular things that you really like about it?
We'll find out. Well, so let me sort of phrase it this way. Baton Rouge, the first week I was there, we got hit with a hurricane. I mean, Louisiana is an amazingly cool cultural experience. It's distinct from anything else in the, New Orleans is one of the most unique places I've ever been to. But it sort of wasn't the right fit for us, to live in long term. We liked Louisiana, and it was and we miss it from time to time, but it's like one of those things where you have a love-hate relationship with 100-degree heat and 95% humidity, right? And then we went to Michigan and Lansing, and Michigan was just I have a hate-hate relationship with, 8 inches of snow and freezing your ass off, right? So
worse than Spokane.
Yeah, and so Spokane was nice. I like Spokane. I'm tempted to say Corvallis, Oregon. Small place, tiny town, but super cool. Great beer, good restaurants. As far as if there was a small town I want to live in, Corvallis is it. But I don't know if I want to go that small again. And so what I've kind of found is Cincinnati's this right hybrid. It's the weather's pretty medium all the time. The food's good but not spectacular, so somehow we're really liking it so far. But yeah, so I'm sort of leaning towards Cincinnati at the moment. And Christchurch was great, but living in New Zealand's a sort of totally different experience, which I love. But maybe not for me or something like that. I don't know.
No, that's cool. I was not guessing that. I was actually gonna guess that it was in New Zealand, but Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning, but I so we left New Zealand more or less because I'm very American at heart by accident. I was frustrated because I would have to wait till my dad used to take me out of school so I could watch Monday Night Football on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. He was don't go to school today. So I don't know that many parents who are I want to watch football. Don't go to school today. Stay home so we can watch Monday Night Football. And so we would get up and I would like get up in the middle of the night to, to watch the World Series and things like this. So,
Very American.
and you miss all your food. Like, I think I'm just like too American at heart. Like,
well, it's good you came back then. I'm very American as well. So,
I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying like it's an accident. Like, I'm just saying like that was.
It just happened.
There's a lot like my brothers and my mom and my dad. They all stayed in New Zealand. They love it. That's like their home. They feel so at home there that they're never going anywhere. So but for Lee and I, like when we got back to like when we were like, can we get a good hamburger? And we were like, oh my God, we can get a good hamburger. Where the hell have we been for the last like 2.5 years? Because like, I mean, New Zealanders will sit there and they'll be like, what are you talking about? We have this hamburger place. It's great. And I'm like, no, it's not. They don't know good hamburger.
The same.
Like, and the problem is they come to the States and then they eat at, like McDonald's and they say, McDonald's is a terrible hamburger. I'm like, yes, McDonald's is a terrible hamburger. But like as Americans, we know that you can find these crazy little like bar food places that have these amazing hamburgers, and you're like, I can't find that anywhere in New Zealand.
Wow, that's hilarious. Yeah, I guess there's certain things you kind of take for granted.
Yeah, and I miss my cereals. Like my cereals in the U.S. are a certain type of cereal. I go to New Zealand, I get a whole different cereal.
I'm not a big cereal guy. Like in the morning, I like eating eggs, oatmeal, all that. But cereal, like every once, I used to eat a lot of cereal, but I don't much anymore.
You just sound like a better human being than me, or maybe one without kids. I just eat whatever the hell I can find in the pantry.
I'm just a human. Yeah, I'm a human being without kids. That's actually my next question. I was gonna ask is, do you like being a dad? Is it crazy?
Like my kids are crazy. I'm probably the quietest person in my house. So my wife is pretty, like, she talks a lot. My kids talk, like somehow they've been amplified. So they're just like chatterboxes. They never sleep.
3 kids. I'm trying to remember.
Two. I have my daughter is just turned 2 and my son is 4. So yeah, I mean, I love being a dad. The thing that I always worried about, I had a kid in grad school. My son was born in grad school, and that was like my biggest concern was like, how am I going to finish this, and have a, and have a child for the first time. And I asked my advisor, and I got really lucky. I don't know how this happened. He had his daughter when he was in grad school. Like, just so happened.
Oh wow!
He was in his grad school when he had his daughter, and he said, he goes, I don't know how this happens. He goes, it's magic, I think. But you're going to somehow get exactly the same amount of work done, even though you only have 1/3 the time that you used to have.
Like you somehow figure it out.
I was like, I don't believe you. This sounds nonsense. Yeah. And he says, and it was just true. And like just whatever I would normally do in 3 hours, I could do in an hour. Yeah. Like things made more sense because they had to. Like somehow you give someone 10 hours.
It's like work expands to fill the time, or time expands to fill the. I don't know how it goes, but it's like the more busy you are, but like you still accomplish all the tasks. I don't know.
I was in like a trance for like a year and a half. I just remember being like, crazy. I didn't even know what was happening, and then like you wake up and you're like, oh, we're done. Like
what?
Yeah, but I mean, I love it. I would trade nothing in the world for it, and that's one of the things I love about Xavier for me is they, we got a lot of young families in the department. We got a lot of young families, just among the faculty, and they're very understanding. Like they'll move my schedule around so I can pick the kids up from school on the way home, to accommodate, or if I only want to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday class schedule so I can stay home Tuesday, Thursday with the kids. They're all about that. So, that is great. That is one of the perks of my job is that, and like, I don't work the summers, right? So like,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you enjoy having a winter break, summer break? I mean, I'm sure you're doing some prep work, but
so far I've never actually taken a summer break. So, last summer, every summer I've taught, like, and just because, when you have kids, money is money. So like if it's there, you take it.
Yes, exactly.
And I've always just sort of gotten like good opportunities. So I've actually never not done anything over the summer. When I was at LSU, I used to do like all sorts of eclectic math related things. So like one summer, first summer there, I taught people who wanted to go back to school. There were high school teachers who wanted to get master's degrees in this math leadership program we did. That was, they would meet 3 summers in a row and then they would have their degree. And so I did calculus for them. It was how to integrate higher calculus techniques into middle school and high school classes. And then the next summer I did, that was Lamisty. The next summer I did a research grant. So I was like working with a professor doing research. And then the third summer I did the same thing, but I actually was the videographer for making promotional videos for them. So I would do like math interviews. I was like you, and then I would cut things down to like, how did you feel that this experience promoted you in the classroom? So I did all the, like, I was like the historian of the program.
Well, maybe I need to talk to you, because I'm like, that is one of my goals, is to edit these a little. Like right now, I'm literally just doing them live and then just posting them. But I'm like, you know, I probably should have, maybe I should have some music in the intro or something. I don't know. Maybe I should have something to make these.
Do like a graphic that flies in from the
yeah, exactly. Something like that.
Yeah, call it like number crunchers. Paul's number cruncher. I don't know. But but yeah. So and then I think the summer after that, I did a high school math camp. And so and then one summer I did ACT prep for some like outreach communities in the Baton Rouge area. So like we worked with sort of some of the lower income areas in Baton Rouge where we did ACT prep for students. We ran a summer camp for that. So I've done like all these like weird things and done different things over my summer that have been in many ways like so much more rewarding than like my August to May job. And then when I was in when I went to Michigan, I did, I think I trained first-year graduates. I was like mentoring first-year graduate students who were teaching for the first time. So I was like I'd come in and observe and give them feedback and things like that. So I would do that for the summer. So I've done, and then I did that 2 summers in a row. So somehow like I've always been kind of running around doing different things.
Yeah, nice.
So I don't know that's cool. This summer.
You know, if it like you have that flexibility at least, which is nice. Like you could take the time off, or you could be doing something, you know, to get the extra time. So.
And that's the nice thing about it is like, you know, you have your time, or you can do different projects. Like that's the cool thing is, if I want to do a math summer camp for high schoolers and make a job out of that for the summer, that's a thing you can do. Like, and that's not what you do 9 to 5. You know, September to May, so I can do something different, and that's half the fun is not getting like having that twist or that break or something different.
That's awesome. Well, Eric, I appreciate you coming on, and that was interesting. It's interesting here because like everyone I talk to, even if like they're all math professors or they're all actuaries, everyone has a different story of kind of how they got there. So I'm sure everyone will appreciate watching this.
I thank you for having me. It was fun. I mean, we haven't talked to each other in 10 years. 10 years?
Yeah. Eric and I were talking before this. Like it's been 10 years, and so yeah, it's good catching up with you. And if you're back in Spokane, we'll grab a beer, or if I'm in Cincinnati, I'll let you know.
Yeah, well, then if you're in Cincinnati, we'll grab 2. We'll call it.
All right, we'll do that.
There's your incentive.
Perfect.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this was good. Thank you for having me.
Everyone, we will see you next time, and I might be having an actuary on next time. So thanks for joining. I'm out from Spokane. Eric is out from Cincinnati.
Sounds good.